Author is funded by the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, supporting writers from pen to publication since 1955. To learn more about the PNWA and their yearly conference, please go to pnwa.org. Hi, this is Bill Kenower of Author Magazine, and I'm here at Third Place Books in Lake Forest Park with Ridley Pearson, author of Shell Game. Ridley, welcome to Author.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
Can you remember in your life, and you've been telling stories for a long time now, but can you remember when just the idea of story lit up in your mind as something valuable to you? It could have been someone told you a story when you were a little boy.
Well, I mean, that's really where it came from, I think. My paternal grandfather could recite Charge of the Light Brigade by heart, and it went on for hours. I mean, it was like 3 hours of rhyming verse, and he could just sit there and recite it for hours.
Why did he memorize it? Just because he could?
I have no idea. I guess because he could. But I would sit on his lap, and he, you know, the veils and thunder, and on and on. I'd just, oh! And my dad had that kind of memory too. He had an unbelievable encyclopedic memory. And my maternal grandfather, who was this big roly-poly guy, was unbelievably creative and kind of a Rube Goldberg. He could build anything, make anything, fix anything, and he had these amazing stories of living in Native American villages. He had all these relics.
And he would tell them to you.
Yeah, and you'd just sit on his lap and he'd tell you oral stories, and you know, it was, and I didn't really, just the other night somebody asked me about this and I connected it and I went, you know, that's when it started, when I was on these guys' laps. I had, you know, wasn't quite sure when it all started for me, but I think I've been telling stories ever since.
Let us say, I've never read a suspense novel, for whatever reason.
Right.
Teach me why suspense novels are worth reading. What is it about a suspense novel that makes them worth diving into?
Well, they're only worth reading if you know, you like them. I mean,
And what is to like about them?
Well, I mean, what I would sell suspense and mystery suspense on is that a well-written suspense novel rises, to me, above a lot of literature in that it has huge stakes. The stakes are human life most of the time. So you got to stay with it because there's a lot at stake. They have well-crafted characters, and they're in a very fast-paced environment. So if you like to be taken away, if you like to forget what time it is and look down and go, is it really 2 in the morning?
Right.
But the overall thing is pleasure of reading and going off somewhere and forgetting all about what's going on around you.
You know, it seems to me that one of the challenges a suspense writer would have is the inherent strength of the suspense novel, which is because it's all life and death, the temptation would be to lean on that threat and forget the character, because unless you care whether that character dies.
I wondered where you were going with that, but I get you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it'd be easy to, you know, you want to keep it moving,
right.
Pull another gun out.
Yeah.
And it seems like as a suspense writer, you've got to remember to keep those characters as real as possible.
Yeah, because readers have to have a rooting interest in the characters.
I don't care
the plot
what
in the world, it doesn't really matter. You have to root for somebody to either win or lose.
Yeah.
And if you can't create that in your work, then the reader's going to get halfway through the book and go, nah, I don't really care, you know, and toss it across the room and try something else. So what's interesting is that between the writer and editor, there gets to be a push and pull of, do we have enough character, do we have too much? Do we have enough, do we have too much? Do we have enough, do we have too much? And it goes on and on because it's a very fine balance. There are times as a writer you'd like to stop for 30 pages and just dig into the character, and you really can't do that.
No.
And there are other times you get carried away with your story, and the editor's going, can't we go back and remember a little bit why we care? And,
right.
You know, that balance, that's why I do so many drafts.
Yeah.
You know, I talk to kids groups because I also write for younger audiences, and I say, you know, we don't write a draft of a book and send it in. You know, I write 6 drafts and I change every sentence in the book. Right. And so for every 300-page book you're reading of mine, I've written 1,500 to 1,800 pages to get it there. And it's that, most of that is figuring out balance. You know, it's working on prose along the way, but it's trying to keep a balance where you're in the story, but you still care and love or hate these characters, and it's tricky.
It is.
You know,
I would wager, because you're still writing adult books.
I am. Oh,
right?
I love it. Yeah.
I would wager though you hear more from your young adult readers than your
Oh
adult
yeah,
readers.
much more. Yeah, only by a factor of 200 or 300.
Yeah. No, it
No,
really is
really.
that.
It
I
is
hear this
that-
from every writer.
That big, yeah.
You gotta love it.
Oh, it's fun because you're constantly interacting with these kids.
Yeah.
You know, we get dozens and dozens and dozens of emails a day from kids, and we get emails from parents, and I had a terrific experience because we get emails from parents that say, you know, my kids, little Johnny wasn't that much of a reader, and then we started reading Starcatchers aloud, or we read The Kingdom Keepers aloud, and he got really excited. Then he took the book away from me, and now he's reading, and I can't tell you how grateful we are. And you know, that means more to you than anything.
Yeah.
So Dave Barry and I write this series together, and I got an email from a mom just like that. And near the midpoint of the email, it said, I'm going on a trip and I'm writing you because I'd like your permission to take your books with me. And I thought, security? You know, I mean, what adult needs your permission? Well, she was an astronaut and going to the International Space Station.
No way!
So Katie Coleman goes to the International Space Station with 4 of the Peter and the Starcatcher books and reads them on her laptop, Skyping with her son every night in Austin, Texas, and they read through the entire 4 books in these 10 months she's in space. And she sent me photos of her up there floating in space, reading the book with this laptop on her lap, you know. Unbelievable. And last April, I'm sitting at the dinner table because I tried to carry on my dad's tradition of always talking and telling stories at the table. And so we're all arguing about something, we're having fun, and my cell phone rings, and I pull it out, and I say, you know, this voice says, "Hi, Ridley, it's Katie." And I said, "No, it's not. Katie Coleman is on the International Space Station, and I know her." And she said, "Ridley, it's Katie calling from the International Space Station." Well, this call was clear as a bell. And I was able to cover up the phone and say to my family, "Shut up, I'm getting a call from outer space." Now, how often can you say that? Once in a lifetime.
Well, Ridley, you got so many interesting stories. I'd like you to finish this sentence for me. All right?
I don't know if I can, but
I know
okay.
you can. If writing has taught me anything, it has taught me what?
Humility.
Humility. Yeah. I've heard that a few times. Why? How has it taught you humility?
It's a really interesting sport. You know, you hit a tennis ball over the net and a bowling ball comes back and hits you in the head. And you're supposed to get up and hit a tennis ball back, and then a watermelon comes over. You know, I was trying to explain to some kids today that it's really hard if a kid stands up or comes up to you and says, "You know, I really love the first book, the third book just didn't really work for me." And I'm thinking, okay, so I spent, you know, 11, 12 months, 8 hours a day, writing 6 drafts of this thing, getting it just as good as I could possibly get it. And an 11-year-old is critiquing me and doesn't like it, you know.
And it affects you.
It breaks your heart. It just breaks your heart. And so I try not to read reviews or do any of that.
Yeah.
So, you know, what I find is that because it's so filled with process, and so much of that process is telling you what you're doing wrong. You know, your editor doesn't write you and say, "Oh man, are you brilliant in chapter 3. She writes you and says, "This character is awful. You have to figure out if this character is this, that, or that, and show me." And you're going, "Yeah, that's right." You know, I've got 42 published books, and I feel about this big most of the time because it's a process. I enjoy it, but it is, you know, humbling to say the least.